freezing?
No.
Somebody got their wings.
Oh. Where did I put this?
Do you guys know that Christmas movie thing? I think it's from It's a Wonderful Life. When you hear a bell, the angels an angel got their wings.
Yeah.
Julia's all ready.
Buki Tukshing Meito Tramri Rabin Shi Nyande Gampadi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwa Kidrokunamdak Shingla Chupashuk Hiram Huratnamandala Kamyatayami Chudan Soki Choknam La Jonchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chunyan Gipe Sunamki Shola Panchir Sange Drupansho Chudan Soki Choknam La Janchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chunyan Gipe Sunamki Drola Panchir Sange Drupansho Chudan Soki Choknam La Janchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chunyan Gipe Sunamki Drola Panchir Sange Drupansho.
Last two classes of this course, you guys, tonight and next week. And then you will have completed ACI 17. Well, the long part anyways.
Yeah.
And so class 9 and class 10 are going to review ACI 10, which some of you just took before this course started. So it should be a pretty easy review, right? And you know what? It's a delicious course. And then from January, we'll be continuing on with ACI 11 and 12, which are the other two courses. We take 3 courses to walk through Master Shantideva's A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And it's really, really, really lovely. If you think about it, 3 courses out of 15, right? Because then there's 3 review courses. So basically 20% of the curriculum is devoted to this book. Kind of says something about the weight that we should give it. Lama Marut called this, because you know I got my Oralung from Lamaji, he calls this the desert island text. If you had to be stranded on a desert island and could only bring one text with you, or one book with you, this is the guide. This is the book that would get you all the way. That's all you had. It's got everything you need in it. So he says you could get enlightened on a deserted island with a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. So as you know, it's by Master Shantideva, and it's a beautiful name he has. Hey, Shanti, for those of you yogis in the room, peace. And Deva is a word for an angel, right? Or a god of sorts. So angel of peace. And he's a monk who, well, actually the story is longer than that. I won't give you the long plain dance version of it. You do need to. But if you remember from ACI 10, or if you haven't taken ACI 10, then you can get the long plain dance version in the readings there. But he was actually a prince. Like many of the beings in our lineage, when you think about it, Gautama Buddha was a prince, right? And a lot of them, Naropa was a prince, and so on and so forth. Anyways, I digress. He was famous, actually, not while he was at the Nalendra Monastery, but he's famous for what happened to him at the monastery, and basically, what's the word? Posthumously is after you die, but what's something when after you leave is because he didn't die, but once he left the monastery, his fame was far and wide. He lived approximately 700 AD, and he is most famous for this Bodhisattva, A Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, but he's also known for writing another book called The Compendium of Training. So the commentary that you have on this text, it's in your reading, is by Gyaltsab-je. Gyaltsab-je is one of the two great, see that picture up there with Je-Tsongkhapa? He's one of the two spiritual sons. He's one of the two great heart disciples of Je-Tsongkhapa. And his dates are, he lived between 1364 and 1432. And he wrote a Tibetan commentary on this text called Entry Point for Children of the Victors. Do you guys know what Children of the Victors means?
Us.
Yes, good, Farah. Us, Bodhisattvas. That's right. It specifically is code word for a Bodhisattva. So Master Shantideva, who wasn't Master Shantideva yet, he was actually a student, right? He was a monk in this Nalanda monastery, and he really kind of kept to himself, and he didn't seem to be doing too much, except eating, sleeping, and going to the bathroom. So the other monks gave him the nasty nickname of Busuku, which means Mr. Three Thoughts, because he only had those three thoughts. Or at least he appeared to the rest of them. And, he was really, from all appearances, he was a bit of a slacker. And so they called him Busuku. And they were also not happy to have him at the monastery because he seemed to be kind of a good for nothing and didn't really seem to be wasting time there or wasting their time or however you want to look at it. Regardless, the majority of the monks decided they wanted him out. But they're monks, okay? So they couldn't kick him out. He hadn't done anything wrong. So they decided that they would humiliate him, embarrass him, so that he would choose to leave. And they thought they would do that by asking him to teach the whole Sangha, over 1,000 monks. And they went to him and asked him to teach. And, he actually declined a couple of times. And then, they finally said, no, please teach, please teach, please teach. And he said, okay. And so on the day of his teaching in the great hall where they were going to have him perform, they built a throne, a teaching throne. This is a teaching throne. And they built a teaching throne that was so ridiculously high that you couldn't just step onto it. And they didn't have any stairs or ladder or anything. They thought they would doubly humiliate him by causing him great embarrassment trying to climb up onto this throne. So they thought. He comes in, and before you know it, he's up on the throne. So they're getting a little nervous. They're like, something's up, right? But he says, do you want me to teach something that you already know? Because a lot of the times teachings were recitations, right? Or do you want me to teach something original, something that that you've never heard from me? And they thought, oh great, this will be good. He doesn't do anything anyways. He can't possibly know anything. Yeah, go on, teach us something original. Teach us something you thought of. And so he does. He starts to teach them the Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And they're mesmerized, and they're listening. And the monks, over 1,000 monks, there were definitely different levels of monks. And it wasn't unanimous that this Master Shantideva was Busuku. The monks who knew. But they, so there were different levels in the audience who could actually understand the depth and breadth of what he was teaching and also keep up with him. Because apparently when he got to chapter 9, which is the chapter on wisdom and emptiness, he started to float. He started to levitate off of his high teaching throne, and he started to float away. So there were some minds who could keep up with them to a certain point, and there was great debate after whether there were 9 or 10 chapters in this book. But finally, as he finished teaching, he was gone. He had floated away to South India, actually, where the monks finally found him. Because, of course, once he disappeared, they're all immensely aware of the huge mistake they've made. They realized that he was very, very realized and not a good for nothing monk. And they were so appalled that they had made this judgment that they sent out a search party. And it took them a while, but they finally tracked him down in South India. And they begged him, the search party begged him to please, settle this debate. Like, did you teach 9 or 10 chapters? Can you just repeat the whole thing so we've got it correctly? And will you please come back? Come back and teach it again. And he said, no, I am not going to come back. I will tell it to you again. And he did. And they said, and by the way, there's a copy of it in the rafters of my old room. And I left you another book too, called The Compendium of Trainings. And when they came back to the monastery, the search party, they did find those 2 books in the rafters to his room. So that's the story of Master Shantideva, and that's actually what makes him famous in the Nalanda monastery. But the real moral, right, is that we really can't judge people by their appearances or even their apparent behavior, right? Because the monks were observing him appearing to do nothing but eat, sleep, and poop. So the general moral is that we really can't tell who anyone else is. But we do it all the time, right? We make the judgment all the time. In fact, we can't help but make the judgment. It's what we do with that judgment that this is also teaching us. Lamaji gave this beautiful explanation that, each of us are like this complicated bubble full of feelings and thoughts and memories and experiences and habits. And then we meet another bubble. And we kind of connect by touching bubbles just a little. And through this little bubble touch, we assume we know the whole person, right? And so this is the story. The moral of the story is to be careful about that. To not overstretch the boundaries of what you think you know. It's actually one of the first things they teach the baby monks in the monasteries in debate. They teach them to know the limitations of their knowledge. It's different from being thinking you don't know anything. It's very, very different. It's just, but knowing that there are limits to our knowledge and that we want to expand that, right? And if you'll remember, those of you who have taken ACI 10, the famous quote from Lord Buddha is that unless you are me or someone like me, you cannot judge, or else you will fall. And what he means is that unless you are him, an enlightened Buddha, or an otherwise enlightened being that is omniscient, you can't judge because you can't read their minds. You can't really know what someone is thinking or who they really are. And, but it's not just Buddha who said that. Jesus said, I'm going to have to quote this because Lamaji said it beautifully. Jesus said, judge not lest ye be judged. He also said people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. But we do it all the time, So it's important to try to curb that. Is the judgment going to come up? Yes. But we really have to know that that's what we've done and not decide that that is what is. Now, we do have to judge people's actions. It doesn't suspend our responsibility if we see the action as harmful. If you observe someone doing something, like the famous example is you see someone mugging a little old lady, and what are you supposed to do? Because if you go to the final logical conclusion of this, and you don't know who these people are, and you don't know what their karma is, then the person who's being mugged has the karma to be mugged, and the person who is doing the mugging is just the delivery system. So, do you just let it play out? No. If you're seeing harm done, then you are responsible for trying to help, for trying to stop that. But you're judging the action, not the person doing it. And that's hard. It's really hard. It's good in theory, but it's really, really hard when we're faced with tragedies or atrocities or severe violence. It is hard. But you know, that's our obligation as a spiritual practitioner, is to try to reduce the violence in the world, right? Whatever way we can, to reduce the harm that's being perpetuated. So the other moral, the secondary moral, is to judge the action but not the person, because you don't know who they are. And really, if you look at that situation of the little old lady being mugged, and you do know your karma, really, who is the one who is actually going to be harmed the most, right? The person whose karma is ripening, that karma is ripened. But the person who's doing the harm has just planted. And it's the acorn to the oak tree, like however bad that situation may appear, it's going to be 1,000 times worse in terms of what that being has just put into place for themselves, right? So really what that does for us is it gives us an opportunity to cultivate compassion. And again, that's a hard one. Easy to say, hard to do. When you're actually faced with quote-unquote real-life situations. But that is the lesson. That is the teaching. And that is the thing that Master Shantideva reminds us. And here's the thing. There are two unconfirmable assumptions when we meet another person. We cannot know for certain, it's unconfirmable, whether they are just a normal being. They appear to be just a normal being, but you really can't, it's not confirmable. It is also not confirmable that they are an enlightened being. Could be, but can't confirm it. They're both unconfirmable. Normal, enlightened. Completely unconfirmable either way. Well, which one is more fun? Which one is more interesting? Which one is more of service to you? Right? So our default is the normal. We actually default to, like, even if the extraordinary happens to us, we try to logic it away as, oh, I just blinked too fast, or I ate something funny, or like, we try to figure out some other reason for the extraordinary thing to make it less extraordinary, to make it more normal somehow, right? And instead of that, when you catch yourself doing it, because that also is a karma, we have the seeds for that. If we catch ourselves, then entertain the alternative. Try assuming the second option. Even if the very first thought that comes up is, oh, they're just a normal schmuck. Say, whoa, wait a minute. Remember Master Shantideva's teaching. What if they're an enlightened being here just to teach me tolerance, just to teach me compassion? Or what is it that they're trying to teach me? They're here for a reason, for me. What is it? If you even ask that question, you are practicing Guru Yoga. You are starting to see the potential that all beings are your teacher. And if you look at the world in that way, in that what if, because you can't confirm it either way, but if you look at the world in that way, like what if everyone's trying to teach me something? Because you know what, you can't prove that they're not trying to teach you something. And that's the emptiness of the situation, right? That's the really, really amazing thing. And this is a really good thing to test out the next time you meet your irritating person. The next time you meet the person that pushes your buttons. You know what? I've got one in my work world. I do. And it's really, really interesting because I did entertain the self-existence of this being for a little while. Even though I know this stuff, right? But I did catch myself. I certainly had the wherewithal of the karmic experience to not actually let the thought come out of my mouth. But I did, and I took the initial sort of interactions as practicing patience. Like I did take it as the Mukha Bandha thing because that's the default. But then I thought, well, okay, wait a minute. You know this stuff. Like, what if? And of course, he can't be irritating if I'm not irritated. Or she can't be annoying if I'm not annoyed. You know? So, and what if this person is here to teach me something that I thought I already knew, but obviously don't, because they're here to teach it to me. And it's interesting, this person has really, really disappeared from my daily experience. Like the minute I thought, whoa, okay, I'm listening. What am I supposed to be learning here? Because really what was happening was, initially it was a big, in this personal story, it was a really big time suck. And I have very limited time to do what I do there. And it was initially feeling like a waste of time. But then when I decided, no, wait a minute, what are you trying to teach me? And I gave this being my time, which is really all they wanted, they don't need it anymore. Or I don't need them to need it anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really kind of cool. But it did take me a while. It took me a few interactions before I figured that one out. So, you know, we practice, right? You practice with where you are in your capacity. But if you go back and you remember this, I actually had to remember this retroactively initially. And then the very next time I was armed. And, you know, I found myself after a little while starting to feel, okay, I can feel the little pricklies of irritation. I'm like, no, keep listening. Because as soon as you feel those, it blocks your ears. Like you really don't listen anymore. And seriously, that's what's been happening. It's interesting. You know, they talk about the great conspiracy, right? That you should think everyone's out to get you, enlightened. Yeah. What if you are the last person in samsara? What if, right? And they're just trying to help you finish it off. So that is the moral of Mr. Three Thoughts, of Mr. Busaku, of Master Shantideva, to be careful about judging other people. So, you know, why not just assume that they are all, in fact, very special? And that, by the way, is a very secret teaching, to look at all beings in that way. It's a practice. In fact, it is the foundation of Tantric Guru Yoga, is to see your teacher as Buddha, not as perhaps an enlightened being, but as the full-on, full-fledged, you know, Buddha. So, and unless you have a very clear understanding of karma and emptiness, unless you're really, really clear in your mind, a really well thought out version of Guru Yoga, it's not going to work. Because for the first little while, you know, there's always the honeymoon period between any sort of new thing, right? You will go through the motions just because you think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But if it's not based in a foundation of authenticity for you, it's not going to last. Here's another thing. I just said, just the next time you catch yourself having this reaction, oh, they're just a normal being, or some version of that, and you're trying to flip it around to, okay, what if? The other way to look at it is, if the enlightened being came to you in their full-on, divine, sacred form, you probably couldn't handle it. You know, like we would probably totally freak out. And one of the texts that I actually have heard this story in is the Bhagavad Gita. And many of you have actually learned that, because that is taught in our yogic lineage here. But it's a beautiful story, right, of Arjuna, who's a prince warrior, who has a charioteer who also happens to be his best friend, whose name is Krishna, who happens to be blue. But anyways, he's just a normal guy to Arjuna. And he, in a way, he's his servant, right? The charioteer works for him, really. But they were childhood friends, and they've been best buds, and they go out, and the whole Bhagavad Gita, which is one part, the song, Gita is song, right? The Bhagavad Gita is one vignette in a larger, epic Indian tale called the Mahabharata. And but the Bhagavad Gita, this relationship between Arjuna and Krishna, actually at the end of it all, you realize it's this divine teaching on Guru Yoga and all of that. But there is this point where Arjuna has this. I'm going to fast forward to the part where he's been actually relying on his charioteer Krishna for a lot of advice in this dilemma that he finds himself in, which is a battle. He is supposed to do battle with his own family. Like, he gets to the front lines and he realizes that the enemy are his own relatives, including the very uncle who taught him how to be a warrior. And so he has this dilemma, like, I can't fight and potentially kill my own family. So anyways, he's asking for all this advice. And he realizes that Krishna is giving him incredible advice. And he starts to really think that, whoa, who are you? Like, you're obviously not just my normal charioteer, you know. And so this goes on for about, 10, 11 verses. Actually, it's in the 11th chapter that he finally says to Krishna, okay, show me your true form. I know you're not who you appear to be. Show me your true form. And Krishna actually says, are you sure? And he gives him some special eye protective wear, but it doesn't really help, because when he does reveal himself, and he does reveal himself to Arjuna, basically what Arjuna sees is the entire cosmos, the just infinite, right? The universe, right in front of his eyes, and his mind is totally blown. Basically, the smoke starts coming out of his ears, like he's just. And he says, okay, whoa, okay, you've got to please resume your normal form. I can't take this. But he does have this, transformative mystical experience. And for the next 10 or 15 verses, Arjuna is actually completely freaking out about what he is seeing, okay? And so out of great compassion, out of great kindness and grace, Krishna does retake the form of a normal blue guy. Yeah. And you gotta think, for the first several chapters, Arjuna thought he was normal. You gotta wonder why he was blue. Right? But anyways, they never mention that in the Gita. But it's really, really sweet. So, it's a very, very long metaphor, though, for Guru Yoga. If the Guru took their real enlightened form, we would freak out. So, out of love, out of grace, our Gurus take a form that we can relate to. Right? They take a form that is neither too high nor too low. And, they might even come as your pet to give you the karma of looking after them. They might come to you as someone you live with, family member, your partner. They will come looking like ordinary people, because they're going to come in the form that is most effective for you. Right? And they would be smart to come as someone very, very close to you. You know what I said earlier about if we start walking through our day as assuming that things aren't normal because we can't prove that they're not normal, if you try this with your partner or with a really close friend, colleague, and think, okay, what if they are God, right? And you try and hold that view, it's going to last about 30 seconds before they do something like burp or need to go to the bathroom or, I don't know, drop their wet coat on the floor or something that's going to make you think, whoa, an enlightened being would not do that. Okay? But it's a really, really, really fast way to make progress in your spiritual life is to try to practice assuming that they are enlightened. Because you don't really know that they're not. And it's the condition of possibility that makes it and that's the practice. The condition of possibility for this practice is to just assume that they are enlightened, because you can't prove that they're not. You can't prove that they are, but you can't prove that they're not. And that is the essence of Guru Yoga, that nothing is normal anymore, and that it's all special, and that it's all meaningful. See, Guru Yoga is just a lens that you focus on another being, and you decide from now on, anything they do, anything they say is meaningful, and nothing is random. They say that if you're a brand new parent, that you should do this with your baby. Like, look at them with that lens. And yes, do you still have to feed them and change their dirty diapers and all that? Absolutely, but you do it as an offering. Like, it's an interesting, Geshe-la said that once. I remember hearing him saying, and it was actually advice in the context of a young couple who thought they were having problems with their practice because their newborn was like, they weren't getting any sleep, and they were, finding it hard to meditate, right? But it was like, no, that is your practice. Talk about single-pointed focus on one thing, right? And but also to do the highest Guru Yoga practice, to look for the divine, to look for the not normal. Yeah. Because with this attitude, with this way of looking at the world, you start to change very, very quickly. And that's how the magic starts to work. That is the magic of Guru Yoga. And remember the condition of possibility. They are not God from their own side, objectively, self-existently, but they're not God either. And that's the emptiness of them. That's what we talk about when we say the word shunyata, or emptiness. Because they're not God, they could be. Yeah. So it's not just Tibetan Buddhism that talks about this stuff. Every religion has some version of this where you have someone special in your life from whom you are trying to learn spirituality, trying to see as a teacher, trying to see as someone who's teaching you. But generally, we have this tendency to keep our religion at arm's length, right? Something that we do for an hour on Sunday or half an hour every morning. We kind of keep it in this sort of gilded cage, and our lamas all say, let the bird out of the cage. And a really interesting Tibetan meditation practice is to pretend to see your teacher, your guru, on your head. Like, you know how the 7 preliminaries, and then you bring the lama to your head and you dissolve them down? Well, don't dissolve them down. Leave them on your head. And go through your day as if you were carrying them on your head. Like, how would you walk and talk and, behave with others if your guru was literally on your head, right? I heard about one monk who was so good about this that when he went through doorways, he would duck. Yeah, so good at visualizing the guru on his head. Have them on your shoulder all day long. Because that's real. That's 24/7 practice, right? Yeah. Because things are empty, they are not special. They are not magic, which means they could be magic, which means they could be special. You'll notice in a lot of teachings about emptiness, you hear a lot of double negatives. So, and not only are we trained to attempt to see every being around us as a teacher, but everything we see or hear as a teaching. And I think one of the earliest experiences we have of this is through popular songs. Especially like as teenagers or as kids, where the songs seem to have messages for us. It's not that they don't. They don't not have messages for us, so they could, right? It's Lamaji particularly thinks Mick Jagger is an enlightened being, you know? That ain't, what is it? I can't get no satisfaction. Yeah. That's a Dharma teaching right there. That's talking about impermanence, right? And the suffering of change. And this whole grasping thing that we have with the side channels, like, it's all in there. So, it's about not getting too, well, you know, I'm not worried about any of you here. We really don't do a lot of ritual in what we teach here. We do teach practice, but we don't do a lot of ritual. We try our best to do the bowls, the offering bowls, and you know, if some of you have had the Gandhi-Lagama practice or any sort of initiations, then there's certain rituals that come with it. Even the four forces purification could be considered a ritual. It is, but in this lineage, we don't do like 1,000. What is it? 108 prostrations regularly, or making 108 water bowls, or 108 little tsatsas, little statues and stuff. Like this is those are all beautiful, beautiful practices, but it's not something that we actively teach and practice here, because what we're really being encouraged to do is to make whatever it is that you're learning real and practical for you, to make it a living practice, to make it a living sadhana, and to make it real so that when you do those rituals of the water bowls or whatever, you understand what you're doing. You understand why you're doing it. And then, it's not relegated to that 5 minutes before class, or first thing in the morning, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you fill your water bowls. Like it's not something that you do just by habit. And when I say habit, I mean, yes, of course it's a habit, but it's a habit imbued with wisdom and understanding the reason why you're doing it. Make it real for you. Have you guys heard the story about the frog in the well? Of the frog that lives at the bottom of a well and thinks that's his entire universe? And there's a bird that comes and visits him and says, no, there's like a whole ocean out there. Like, you should see it. And he describes the ocean, and the frog's like, you're full of, it's this is the world right here. What more do you need? This is it. And then one day the bird actually takes the frog, like, out of the well and takes him to the ocean. And basically what happens to the frog is what happened to Arjuna. His head explodes. Because, it was just, but because he had been so caught up in his own version of reality too, right? And just really, really closed to the condition of that there could possibly be anything else out there beyond what was immediately in front of him. So, yeah, so that's the teachings from Master Shantideva. Okay, so the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life is divided into 10 chapters. The first chapter is about the benefits of the wish for enlightenment, and we're talking about bodhicitta and its powers. And so bodhicitta, right, is the mindset that wants to, well, we all know what the definition is, the wish to get enlightened for the sake of all living beings. Like, we'd rattle it off our tongues like cocktail banter, right? But really, it's the desire to wake up from the dream of suffering. Here's the thing, when we finally wake up from the dream of suffering, we will realize we were never suffering in the first place. But the mind that thinks that things are wrong and suffering, that's where we are right now, that's actually a deluded mind. We are living a mistake. This is a broken realm here. And when we figure it out, when we get it right, we will wake up. And when we wake up, we will realize that we caused ourselves self-inflicted injury for no reason. But it won't be a guilt thing. It'll be just an understanding of it. So bodhicitta is the wish to really, really stop suffering and to wake up. So this first chapter is about the benefits of that wish. And I love this. Lamaji likes to call it having spiritual OCD, to be obsessively compulsive about doing whatever it takes to get enlightened. Like everything in your world, everything and everyone is basically logistical support for getting you enlightened. That's the first one, the benefits. Second chapter is about purifying bad deeds. Oh, wait, that's not the second chapter. That's the second benefit, I think. First chapter is about the benefits. So here's the benefits. That's right. So everything is logistical support. It actually... No, sorry, that's right. That's right. It is the second chapter, is about purifying bad deeds. Yeah. So, once you've got your motivation straight, right? Once you realize that this is what you want to do, you also realize that you need to purify your obstacles. You need to purify the things that are blocking you from your spiritual goals. So we need to get rid of our obstacles. You must clean up your past bad karma if you're going to get enlightened quickly. So basically, you can sum this up in 3 ways. Stop doing negative karma. Stop doing things that would cause bad karma to come to you, right? Stop doing the things that will cause you pain in the future. That's the first one. Start collecting new good karma and purify old bad karma. So stop collecting new bad karma. Really, really work on collecting lots of new good karma. And then thirdly, purify whatever old bad karma you have. So chapter 2 covers a lot of that. Chapter 3 is called Acquiring the Wish for Enlightenment. And this is where it really explains the Bodhisattva vow ceremony, because this is where ritual actually is important. And it really cements the motivations that you were getting from understanding the benefits in chapter 1. And as a part of this purification process, realizing that you want to speed up the development. In chapter 3, you acquire the wish for enlightenment, so that includes the ceremony which ritualizes the intention to get there. Chapter 4 is called Using Carefulness, and this, in Sanskrit, sometimes the concept is called smriti. It's recollection, mindfulness, remembering what you're supposed to be doing with your life, instead of getting diverted by samsaric entertainment or diversions, right? And you're remembering that constantly, night and day, 24/7. Chapter 5 is called Guarding Awareness. And this is usually where they locate the 2nd and the 6th perfections. Here's another thing you may have heard before, that the Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life is really talking about the 6 perfections, which are the 6 activities that will get you enlightened. So chapter 5 is where they really talk about the 2nd and the 6th perfection. So we have the first perfection is giving, which they actually don't really deal with. He doesn't really deal with until the last chapter. But the 2nd perfection is ethics, right? Sometimes we call it kindness. It's morality. And the 6th perfection is the wisdom, right? So this chapter, Guarding Awareness, means you're watching, you're guarding your morality. You're watching your ethical life. You're being especially careful not to hurt other beings. By definition, bodhisattvas are more concerned about the welfare of others than they are about the welfare of themselves, by definition. They become a helper, right, rather than the helpee. But you have to always remember that airplane thing where you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else if the plane is going down and the oxygen masks come down. So, but, be very, very careful not to harm anyone is the essence of ethics, and that's what's mainly covered in chapter 5. Chapter 6 is about not getting angry. That's what they call it. They call it the chapter on not getting angry, which is really about the perfection of patience, which is the 3rd of the 6 perfections, okay? or paramitas in Sanskrit. And patience is specifically means not getting angry. It includes being able to wait calmly in a grocery lineup at Costco or for the bus or something. But it's not, that's just a minor version of it. Like what they're really talking about is not getting angry when the situation is ripe for it. I mean, it's easy to not get angry if there's no reason to be angry, right? But this is talking about when, under normal circumstances, you would go into a rage and you would feel completely justified. You don't, because you are practicing the perfection of patience. It's when you don't respond with anger when provoked. And, you know, this is something to get really, really clear on. Anger is not your friend. This is something I was not clear of in my 20s because I was actually quite shy. And I remember being on the job, and at one point I felt that I was in a situation where, because of anger, I could clearly remember it, and it wasn't a heated anger, it was an ice cold, very powerful anger. I felt that for the first time I stood up for myself, and that the whole interaction was absolutely perfect. Like I really felt that I was very misguided, but like in the moment, I felt that it was anger that had given me strength. I thought that it was anger that had given me the voice to stand up for myself. And, you know, we mistake the result for the thing that came immediately before it, right? And it took me a while to figure out that anger is not my friend. If we somehow leave a door open for, oh, but it's okay to be angry if, like, you know, in these certain situations, there is actually one situation in which it is okay to be angry, and that's at your own anger. You turn the emotion of the mental affliction upon itself. That, by the way, works with doubt, too. It works with all of them. You turn the very emotion of the specific mental affliction on itself.
That's utilization. Got it.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what that one meant.
So, if we leave any room for our mental afflictions, and I did leave room for my anger for a little while because I really thought, I thought that was what gave me strength, you know? And then it will take over. It will run rampant. And, you know, they say our mental afflictions, right? Our mental afflictions are our worst enemy. Like if you think of an enemy external to you, terrorists are probably the biggest sort of threat in the modern day world, right? If you think of a terrorist, they have other interests other than terrorizing you 24/7, right? They do. They have families. Lamaji likes to think they have hobbies. You know? Your mental afflictions do not take a day off. They do not have anything else to do other than to terrorize you 24/7, to afflict you 24/7. So they are the real enemy there. So if anger is used to eradicate anger, your own anger is used to eradicate your own anger, then it's not an affliction. Because actually in this chapter, in this argument, of course, there's always debate, right? Like debate is thrown in as the natural teaching tool. And usually when a statement is made, like a philosophical, spiritual statement is made, the author actually counteracts it with the arguments that your mind naturally is going to bring up. And so there is this debate within this chapter that says, isn't anger at anger itself a mental affliction? And yeah, and Master Shantideva says no, it's not. If it's in the interest of eradicating that very mental affliction, then it's part of the enlightened side of things. So use the force, because really that's all, because again, they're not self-existently anything, but they are an energy force, and when it's in a mentally afflicted state, its sole purpose is to hurt you. So harness the energy of that, turn it, and use it for something that will propel you higher, right? Use your mental afflictions against themselves. use desire, ignorant desire, to be free of desire, want to be free of desire, like really, really want it, right? And yeah, like that. So that chapter 6 is about fighting anger with patience. Chapter 7 is about virya, joyful effort, which is the next of the 6 perfections, which is basically telling us how to be happy working our ass off for our spiritual goals, right? And then the 5th of the 6 perfections, which is meditative concentration, the perfection of concentration, is covered in chapter 8, in the beginning of chapter 8. At the beginning of chapter 8, Master Shantideva goes on and on and on about how wonderful it would be to leave the hell of life in a monastery. We think of I think of monasteries as these pristine, sort of chilled out places, but I actually haven't been to an Indian or Tibetan monastery. I know people who have. They say that it is really noisy and lots of people and lots of activity constantly. And so Master Shantideva goes on and on and on about, getting the heck out of there and going to a forest where he's not living 5 feet away from the next guy. If only I could get some peace, right? So, because I don't know.
Animals in the forest.
Well, but you have to, if you read any of Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Master Swatmarama, they talk about finding a conducive place. And so the place has to be safe and away from critters and stuff, or at least in a protective, that's why they always recommend a meditation hut, or as opposed to just meditating under a tree, which is actually a place if you've got a high enough practice to do it. But he talks about
the noise that the animals would make.
Could be.
Like if he has the karma for hearing
That's
all that
right.
noise,
It'll
it doesn't
follow
matter
you.
where he goes.
That's very true, Sarah. And I can attest to that. In my last retreat, I had a woodpecker who liked to peck right outside my yurt for the first little while. And my karma shifted. But he does. Master Shantideva describes the need to get away to a quiet place to meditate. So really he's teaching us in chapter 8 about the benefits of retreat. But he not only does that, he goes on to teach us what to meditate on. And he specifically describes the practice of Dakshin Yamje, exchanging self and others. So you learn how to be a compassionate, altruistic person, which is the goal of a Bodhisattva, right? By meditating on how others people's happiness is at least equal to yours, if not more important. And there's so many beautiful meditations within that exchanging self and other practice. Christine has taught that whole module here before. We may ask her to do it again. It's exquisite. But they are meditations that you really work on not only cultivating the altruistic motivation, but working to get rid of obstacles that are standing in our way, like our own pride, like our own selfishness, like our own ego. And really this whole exchanging self and others, which ultimately becomes an expanding oneself to include all others, is beautiful. Okay, and then chapter 9, right? We talked about that being the pivotal chapter. Prajna, in Sanskrit, the perfection of wisdom. The first verse in chapter 9 talks about how everything else has been leading up to this. All the other perfections, all the other trainings are just in the interest of perfecting wisdom. And it is one of the most profound presentations on emptiness that you will find in Buddhist literature. It's in the direct lineage of Arya Nagarjuna. Apparently His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches chapter 9 often. Tibor, do you have translations of chapter 9 in any of your extensive library?
I've got 2, actually 3. One from Alan Wallace.
Yes.
The other one from His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is the one that was by a group of people.
Okay.
Quite a lot of people actually, and His Holiness recommends that as being the most accurate. You can buy it from
Banyan
Amazon.
or Amazon.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that actually gives you the whole story of Master Shantideva,
Yeah.
teaching this at the monastery, very detailed, absolutely
Wow.
very detailed.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the 9th chapter, you can learn more about.
It's very difficult.
We will cover it in terms of the crucial points of that chapter in ACI 12. And it's all dedicated to the 9th chapter. ACI 12 is dedicated to the 9th chapter of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the Wisdom chapter. So I told you the first perfection, we kind of skipped over that, right? Like chapter 5, we launched right into the second perfection. And we didn't talk about any of the perfections in the previous chapters. In chapter 10, this is usually where they locate the first of the 6 perfections, which is the perfection of giving, right? Chapter 10 happens to be the chapter on dedication. And the reason it's where Master Shantideva so exquisitely teaches the perfection of giving is he says, I finally have something of worth to give you now. This is like everything that I have given you is worthy of giving. And he writes this, it's incredible. By the way, you guys know that I'm trying to finish this cookbook for Lama Ivan and Lama Raja, right? And it's about the 6, well, it's loosely, I need some help with the title, by the way, but the working title is The 6 Perfections, Cooking with Hot Oil. And they are including Geshe-la's translation of chapter 10 in the cookbook. And it's exquisite. And it does talk about things like, may the karma of this meritorious act of writing this book benefit all other beings. And it's verse after verse of things like, may travelers get to where they go without problem. May women deliver babies without pain. May, like all these exquisite things that he wishes for all of us is offered up in this final chapter as a dedication for what he has just done, which is write all chapters 1 to 9, right? Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So this is the chapter. Chapter 10 is the chapter on giving through the vehicle of a dedication, of a significant dedication. Okay, I should probably cover some homework questions. Name and describe 5 metaphors used to describe the benefits of the wish for enlightenment. So this is chapter 1, right? The benefits for the wish for enlightenment. So here are the 5 metaphors. 1, an alchemical elixir that can change the inferior body we have now into the supreme body of a Buddha. So alchemy was the science, right, of changing base metal into gold. So the wish for enlightenment is like an alchemical elixir that can change your base physicality into an exquisite body of an enlightened being. With that wish, if you have that wish, right? So that's the first one, like an alchemical elixir. Second, it's like a precious jewel, difficult to find, but is able to clear away all poverty of any kind. 3, it's like an evergreen tree that never dies. Now, the classical description says it's like an evergreen tree that never dies, that constantly bears fruit. I didn't think evergreen trees were fruit-bearing trees, but I think that I think what it means is that it's a tree that will never, like even if it was a tree that was bearing fruit, it would never drop its leaves. It would never go through the decay. It would be constantly evergreen, right? I think is what they literally mean in the ancient text. But when it's translated into English, evergreen to me is a pine tree, right? Or a spruce or a cypress. So
Junipers have berries.
do they have berries? Okay, there you go. But I like my analogy of a tree that is forever green, too.
Yeah.
Either way. 4, a great warrior able to protect one from great fear and danger. So the wish acts as protection. And 5, it's like a fire at the end of the eon that ends the world. So if you've taken ACI 9, where we talk about the cosmos and time and space, they talk about eons, and they talk about the end of worlds, right? So it's like the fire that happens then, that is able to burn away all of your bad deeds without any difficulty. Okay. There's another homework question that we cover tonight, and it asks about the differences between okay, kind of have to know a couple things here. It asks about the difference between the practitioners of Hinayana and Mahayana tracks, but specifically in relation to the 5 paths. So let's quickly do a quick review of the 5 paths. Path of accumulation, right? Mainly reached through renunciation. 2, the path of preparation, because you've been collecting the merit after you've been on the path of accumulation. And in the path of preparation, you're really, really honing your intellectual understanding of emptiness, which takes you to the path of seeing, which is where in deep meditation you have that transformative mystical experience, where you do see ultimate reality directly. And you do become a different kind of being. And then path of habituation, the 4th one, where you habituate yourself to what you saw. It's the mop up and clean up operation. And then 5, path of no more learning, which is really not any longer a path, it's the destination, where you actually reach Buddhahood. So, knowing that there are those 5 paths, and there's 3 kinds of practitioners, that means there's, okay, the 3 kinds of practitioners divide Mahayana Hinayana into 1/3 and 2/3. The 2/3 are Hinayana, listeners and self-made Buddhas, and then the 1/3 is the Mahayana, which is the Bodhisattva track. Okay, so the question is, what is the difference between them? And there's really only one difference, which is your intention, your motivation. The Hinayana motivation is for to get along the spiritual journey higher and higher for themselves, like to get themselves out of the possibility of a lower rebirth. And so they're still going for the end goal, but they're going at it at a different tack, shall we say, if we use a sailing analogy, where the motivation is to reach nirvana, to end all of one's own mental afflictions. And actually, if you really think about it, that's not a bad thing, because if you had no more mental afflictions, you'd be fast-tracking it to altruism really, really quickly, without any problem. But they do say that the only track for full enlightenment, because nirvana isn't full enlightenment yet, it's just the end of your mental afflictions, right, is through the Bodhisattva track, through the Mahayana track, where your motivation is not only for yourself, but for all beings. And it creates the karma. It creates the karma for your future to be totally pure. Because again, it's cause and result, right? It's cause and effect. You put the karmic causes into place. If you are putting the cause into effect for one being will reach a very high state of realization. But at the level of enlightenment, you're not just one. You're omni, right? You're omniscient. You're all encompassing. You know past, present, and future. You can emanate in a heartbeat. But really what gets you there is the motivation. And that's really the only difference, the intention. And the intention being that the intention of the Mahayana practitioner is bodhicitta. So this homework question all ties into, because we've just learned about what bodhicitta can get us, this is the clarification of why it's important. So the text then goes into a little bit about making offerings, the practice of making offerings. Describe and name the highest object for offerings as a way to collect the good energy that you need to propel you on your spiritual path. So the highest to whom you can make offerings, easy way to remember that is to remember where you are. 3 jewels. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But the next question is, what is the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel? Because they're very different from what is normally thought of as the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay? Because the texts do say that there is a symbolic Buddha, Dharma, Sangha and an actual jewel of the three. So the symbolic Buddha, actually even Gautama Buddha, who lived 2,500 years ago, is a symbolic Buddha for us now, right? The statues, the tankas, all of the relics, all of the representations are the symbolic. And it's not that there's anything wrong with them, because, they do act as reminders. But the jewel is understanding the emptiness of the Buddha. The Dharmakaya is the real Buddha jewel. And you could even say the Dharmakaya and the Svabhavakaya, the essence body, right? It's the two elements of the emptiness side of a Buddha. What makes a Buddha possible? And really, this is a really cool thing to take refuge in, the Buddha jewel. See, the Dharmakaya, the Buddha, the historical Buddha, and all the beings who have become Buddhas merely realized their potential to be enlightened. And because of emptiness, you too have that potential. You have the exact same potential as Gautama Buddha. And that's what you're taking refuge in, that potential, that possibility. The Dharma symbols are the teachings, the blah blah that's coming out of my mouth, the texts, your readings, all the stuff you can surf online, all of the books you can buy at Banyan, all of the books you can find in Tibor's beautiful library. They are the symbolic Dharma, right? And again, nothing wrong with them. That's where we find the information. They're very, very useful. But the real Dharma jewel are the cessations of and realization of emptiness that happen in the mind of the practitioner. That's the real Dharma jewel. And see, the teachings themselves, the words, cannot help you unless they bring about changes in your mind, in your heart, realizations within you. That's where they can be of ultimate refuge, right? And the ultimate realization is Buddhahood itself, but the real Dharma jewel is the realization of emptiness in your mind. Because when that happens, it changes everything. So the Sangha, symbolic Sangha, are the monks and nuns, the robed practitioners. We also extend that to the group of like-minded practitioners who study Dharma. We call ourselves a Sangha. And that's not wrong, but that is symbolic. And really, the Sangha jewel are the Aryas, those who have seen emptiness directly. And they are the real refuge because they can teach you. They've done it, so they can teach you how to get there directly. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if that does it refer only to Buddhist practitioners, or can be anybody?
Yeah. Buddhism is just a label that speaks to all of us in the room, but no, this is, and I think out of all of the different named religions, Buddhism to me explains it the best to my mind, but not to everybody's mind, and it definitely is not relegated to a specific, I just finished reading a beautiful book recommended by my Lama, by Saint Teresa. Yeah. What book was that? Called something Castle. I'm so bad with the punchline. The Hidden Castle or it's got Castle in.
That must be beautiful.
Oh my God, it's so exquisite. I will give it to you for Christmas. No, seriously, it's exquisite. I don't think it's in print anymore, but you can.
That's a whole book.
It's exquisite. I think it's 15th century, and it is phenomenal. It talks about the 7 chambers of the inner castle. That's what it's called, the inner castle. Literally, it's talking about this in 7 interior spaces as opposed to 5 paths. And it's exquisite. It really is.
Wow.
I've said it in public. It's yours. No, it is. I'll bring it next time. Seriously. Merry Christmas. No, it's
Oh, I
gorgeous.
can't wait to
It
read
is. It
it.
is so gorgeous. Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that we're actually really not encouraged to read stuff much. Like, you know, we really are encouraged to really take these things and practice them. And we're also encouraged to learn Tibetan and Sanskrit and go to the authentic sources and translate them ourselves, right? But having said that, there are also Dharma homeworks or Dharma assignments that are teachers, the exceptions, right? The movies that we're told about in these books. And this book, I gotta tell you, is exquisite. So I will bring that next week. Okay, homework. Describe why refuge can act. And then Farah, you need to lend it to Yulia after you finish reading it, so she can understand that this practice is not directly. It's not exclusive to Buddhism or to Christianity or anything. Like it's exclusive to the practitioner. You know, it's like His Holiness says. You can list all the isms and itties like Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism this way, but really the line goes this way. Those who are practicing and those who aren't. So it's like that. Okay, describe why refuge can actually protect you. See, by taking refuge in the three jewels, you are reasserting your belief in emptiness. Because really, the common denominator between all those jewels was emptiness, right? The emptiness of the Buddha, the direct perception of emptiness, the group of people who have seen emptiness directly. Bless you. Thank you. So really, it's to understand that the world, that everything comes from you and not at you. That's the real refuge. Okay, name 3 important reasons for the practice of purification with the 4 forces. So, because we're working our way through the chapters, right? And this chapter is about purification. So, quickly, the 4 forces of purification. I actually like to call it the 4 R's, although that's not how it's originally taught. But 1, refuge. This is where you reassert your understanding of what we just said. You reassert your understanding of what real refuge is, your understanding of karma and emptiness, all of that. You take refuge. 2, regret, intelligent regret. You wish you hadn't done this thing that you know is going to come back as bad results for you. Restraint, 3rd. You set a realistic time limit to not doing that thing again. And they do say set a realistic time frame, because if it's unrealistic, you'll break it, and not only will you break it, you will have added lying to your laundry list of things you're trying to clean up. And the 4th one, they all call it antidote. I like to call it recompense or reparation, just because I like the sing-song of the 4 R's. But it's any kind of makeup activity. What can you do in recompense for the negative thing that you just did?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is a different order. Why is it in a different order than what?
It's not a different order. It's different. It's usually called refuge, intelligent regret, restraint, and antidote. I like to call it refuge, regret, restraint, recompense.
I've learned, well, I can't remember where we learned it, but we've learned it. I noticed that in the Bodhisattvas, it is different. It's a different order.
Oh, you're talking about the original teaching of the Buddha. That is in a different order. The refuge doesn't come first.
Yeah, regret comes first.
Yeah, that's the way it was taught. But this is just put into a logical order for us as practitioners.
Okay.
Because you really need that firm foundation to stand up on, or normally our form of regret is guilt, and guilt is not useful. When we feel bad about something, we usually feel guilty.
Yeah.
Right? Not a healthy emotion to have. So you have to have reaffirmed your foundation of understanding where things really come from, and then you really do feel regret. You really do feel that you don't want to do the thing that you just did and do something about it. Guilt is just feeling really, really more bad about you.
Yeah,
it's more about you again. It's not really about what you're going to do about it. So yeah, the Lord Buddha did teach it in that way. You're absolutely right, but it has shifted into this order for contemporary practice.
Okay.
So they're not wrong. Then there's no contradiction.
I'm just like curious as to why. Actually, I
Yeah.
never learned why.
And
I
that is
never asked
actually
why.
explained in one of the ACI classes. I can't remember the number now, but the original order is taught in the way you remember it. So it has to be one of the ACI you've taken.
So Jitsun Kappa order
Yeah.
that you're talking about,
Yeah,
and
it's
Master Shantideva is presenting it
in a different way.
Yeah.
And Jitsun Kappa is taking it from the canon, which would
Yeah.
have come from Lord Buddha.
That's right.
So
But
he
see, Master
makes it
Shantideva
sound
is
like-
giving it to us in a way to practice, to become bodhisattvas,
It's a
right?
Bodhisattva.
A guide to the way of the
spin.
bodhisattvas.
Mhm.
So that's why we've rearranged it. But then when you think about it logically, that's how it makes sense to me. You
Mhm.
need that firm foundation to push
Basis.
yourself
The
up
basis.
against because
Mhm.
you have fallen down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just
And
got
there's other
confused
ways
which one
that
to
they've
follow.
Taught it too, where they do call them bases, like destruction, base,
Basis
foundation.
force,
Yeah, exactly.
destruction.
So for the purposes of this review, just go with the 4 R's. Refuge,
First.
intelligent regret, restraint, and recompense or antidote. Okay, how should we make great efforts in why should we make great efforts in purification? And they give us 3 reasons why. 1, because we don't really understand what we're doing. We don't really understand the laws of karma and their consequences. Not really. We pay a lot of lip service to it. If we really understood it, we wouldn't be doing half the stuff that we do, okay? That's why we need to purify. 2, we are unable to follow what little we do know well enough that we don't require purification, okay? And 3rd, we need to remove obstacles to achieve the true wish, because you actually don't even get to this altruistic motivation if you don't clear away the obstacles that are preventing it. So without these kinds of practices, we're blocked from our goals. Okay. By the way, Sarah, that guilt thing I told you about, a really good antidote for that, for the regret that comes up, is to rejoice. And rejoice really increases our tendency to do more good by revisiting the good things that we do. So it's building new habits, right? Okay, next homework question, the 3 different levels of virtue to rejoice in. So here's the 3 things to rejoice in. 1, virtue for ourselves and others that can lead to higher births. So you rejoice for the virtue that can get either you or anybody else to a higher rebirth. 2nd is you rejoice in the virtuous deeds that can get you or anyone to nirvana. And the 3rd one is you rejoice in the virtuous deeds that lead to the highest enlightenment. So basically we're looking at the goals again, right? The lower goals of getting a higher rebirth or reaching nirvana, and then full enlightenment. So you rejoice in anything and everything that will help accomplish those goals for yourself and or others. So there is a homework question to name and describe the opposite to rejoicing. Because they're...
I had a quick
Jealousy.
question.
Oh, sorry, Leslie.
Is this the highest rebirth? In the sense that it'll get you to...
That's a good question. You know what? The human rebirth, yes, is the highest potential. It's the highest opportunity. It's the perfect vehicle. But remember there was that throwing karma and then finishing karma? You could be thrown into a human rebirth, which is potentially the best, but your finishing karma might be that you're in the middle of a third world country and you have no means of survival, never mind support. You know, so there's, but yes, the human birth is your best vehicle and opportunity, and that's why they say if you can recognize that, then grasp this rare leisure and opportunity that you have and do something with it, because it is very, very rare according to the scriptures. You could take that to the debate ground though, because they do say
as opposed to wishing for
a higher rebirth. Yes,
from here to
Yes.
a pleasure being or something.
exactly. Because what we did learn through our walk through samsara, that's still in samsara, right? And that when the karma for the blissful, extravagant lifestyle runs out, you have only one way to go. The human realm, the human existence is the best balance of enough happiness and bliss that we know what we aspire to, but enough pain and suffering that we know what we want to get out of, so that you've got the right level of motivation? Good question. Okay, name and describe the opposite to rejoicing. So it's actually a kind of jealousy. Being unhappy at the virtue of others. Unhappy when others are better practitioners or better teachers or better yogis than we are. Don't do that. Rejoice for them. Be so stoked for them. And it's interesting, the happier you are, say you're a teacher, the more you rejoice for other teachers, the more popular you're going to become. Because that's the karma for it, right? The karma of being a successful teacher, in part, is being happy about the success of other teachers. Okay, we're almost done. The 4 kinds of dedication. What is the difference between a prayer and a dedication? So a prayer means you wish something could happen. A dedication, remember chapter 10, is directing the energy of stuff you've already done and applying it, dedicating that energy to the very, very important goal of getting enlightened in this lifetime, using this very rare human birth to do it. So that's the difference between prayer and dedication. Prayer is, I wish something will happen. And dedication is, by the fact that I've done this, I dedicate it to that. And there's 4 kinds of dedication listed in the guide. 1, there's a general dedication, general to the happiness of all beings. 2 is dedication for the sick, specifically for the sick, so that they will feel better. 3rd kind of dedication is to remove hunger and thirst. 4 is the dedication that everyone's wishes can come true. May all beings be happy. So, what is it that we're dedicating? We're dedicating the virtue of all the good that we have done, all the good, from our offerings to requesting holy beings to stay, the 7 limbs, basically. And what we're wishing for while we're dedicating is that we ourselves can become enlightened. Is that Dustin?
I think so.
We're almost finished. 30 seconds, okay? So yeah, the general dedication, even dedicating that the sick will feel better. See, really, all of those dedications are actually towards the end goal of you getting enlightened. Because how are you going to see to it that no one gets sick again, right? How are you going to see to it that hunger and thirst are removed, or that everyone's wishes can come true? You got to get enlightened, right? Because when you are enlightened, you will have cured all sickness and pain and suffering in the world. Do you know why? Because it's not out there. It's not out there. Your world is coming from you. There are projections of sick and hungry and thirsty and not getting enough coming from you and not at you. Okay? When you fix you, you will have fixed the world. Yeah. That's actually a hard one, because it feels like, if you ever wonder if you've gotten emptiness yet, try that, mull that one around, and you're going to hit the wall of, but wait a minute, what do you mean? But that's the one that you do need to really work on your cushion. When you fix you, you will fix your world. See, another way we say that is actually in relationships. You will be perfect when I am. Because it's usually we think about it the other way around, right? I will be happy when you make me happy. It doesn't work that way. It's, you will be perfect when I am. So how am I going to get perfect? Did you have a question? Okay. So yeah, you just have to see bodhicitta, right? This is what we've been talking about the whole way. Bodhicitta means that you want to be the next Messiah. You want to be the next Savior. But the thing is, see, when you have real bodhicitta, you don't need to want to be anything. You are the next Savior with real bodhicitta. You are all, actually, you know what? You already are the next Savior of the world right now. You know why? Because it's your world. Right? So step up and assume your responsibility, okay? Because you already are Maitreya. You already are the next Buddha. And other beings will suffer in your world until you step up to that responsibility. That's the realization of bodhicitta. You realize it's your job anyways, and whether you realize or not, because your world does come from you. So if you really want to fix your world out there, fix yourself. And when you have fixed you, you will have fixed your world. And that's the big lesson that Master Shantideva has. And we are only halfway through his book. We'll finish off next time, okay? So that, my angels, is class. And according to my phone, it's 9:01.